A production fee for your Hometown Health Connection was made by Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine and its sponsors. Breast cancer. According to the American Cancer Society, breast cancer is the most common cancer in women in the United States except for skin cancers. Now, it accounts for about 30%, or 1 in 3, of all new female cancers each year. Estimates for breast cancer in the United States note that close to 311,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer will be diagnosed in women, and of those, an estimated 42,000 women may lose their life from having it. The median age at the time of breast cancer diagnosis is 62, but statistics show that it is starting to happen much younger with women. On this special edition of your Hometown Health Connection, meet 2 women and a doctor who will share their journey with breast cancer and look to help you and your loved ones. I'm John DeSciullo. Welcome to your Hometown Health Connection. Let's meet our first guests for this first segment. 2 very strong, prominent, successful women who many of us know and cherish. First, Annette Pinder, a wife, mother, grandmother, and longtime publisher, writer, marketer, and advocate for health for everyone who reads her publication, Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine. It's available free everywhere in our hometown and online at buffalohealthyliving.com. Annette is not only a guest and producer for this episode, but for this series overall. And your Hometown Health Connection is the show. Now, Annette's going to share her story, of which she notes that she, contracted breast cancer, and the vital role that breast cancer screening played in early detection and what that meant to her. And then you'll meet Mercedes Wilson, food entrepreneur with Sadie's Relish brand, a broadcaster and host of Studio 7 and Recipes for Life on WKBW Channel 7, founder of the For Our Daughters not-for-profit organization to empower women, and of course, a former WBBZ personality who we introduced on Bragging Rights and later the Daily Buzz 716. Mercedes will share her journey with overcoming breast cancer with hope, determination, and a positive attitude. And a little later, we'll meet Dr. David Crooks, breast surgeon and surgical oncologist with Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center and Roswell Park Care Network locations, 3 of them overall. First, ladies, I'm so glad we're together. I respect and admire you both greatly, especially in sharing your personal stories and how we can help others in this special show. Mercedes, let's start with you. Diagnosed at age 28 with stage 2 breast cancer. What was that moment like when you found out at such a young age? How did you react? What happened to treat your cancer?
It was sheer shock, John. 28 years old, a single mom, 2 young kids, and working a full-time job, loving my life, corporate America. And I went for a lump that had been there for a couple of years, to be honest. And I found a new primary doctor. She felt the lump and refused to take me on until I went to get checked. So she sent me to Roswell. They did a biopsy, quickly did a biopsy. And within a couple of weeks, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. That process, it flipped my world upside down. There was no history of it. My family and I didn't even really talk about our health like that. So for me to even, think to ask, it just never happened. So I had to go through 8 rounds of chemotherapy because of my age, they did not want to go straight to a mastectomy. So I got 8 rounds of chemotherapy to shrink the lump, which that actually worked very well. 45 rounds of radiation, and then a couple different surgeries.
So the lump was something you detected, or was it something that was detected with a mammogram?
No, it was something that I detected and I spoke about with previous doctors, but because of my age, John, to be honest, I was 26 the first time it was felt, and it was kind of brushed off. 27 when I went for my yearly, it was brushed off. And it wasn't until I found a new doctor and I wanted her to take me on that she said, well, I can't in good conscience bring you on unless you get this checked. So it was her that saved my life.
Wow, amazing. And here we are years later. Annette,
Yeah.
your diagnosis with cancer was stage 1 and fairly recent. And your cover story on the magazine indicates that you were, I guess, in a bit of denial with the news. Tell us the timeline of events for you, and we'll chat about Mercedes as well.
Just, I got my postcard in the mail that said, time to schedule your mammogram. I didn't pay that much attention to it. I knew it was something I had to do. I knew my time was in May, and I put it off for a couple of weeks and then reminded myself. I went and I expected to happen what normally happened, is everything would be fine. And it was really surprising to me to find out that it wasn't. I actually, th they didn't let on anything in the room, but I asked if I could have my results and if I could stay for them, and they said, "We don't do that anymore." And they said, "But wait a minute, let's, let me ask the doctor," because they knew there was something. And the doctor actually got on the phone with me while I was in the room and said, "We're pretty sure you have breast cancer." And it was really, and they scheduled a biopsy for me for the very next day. And fortunately, it was caught really when I got my final results after my biopsy. I was told that I had stage 1 in situ, which means it's in confined to one place, and that and that I had the best possible kind of cancer you could have if there is such a thing, because it was highly responsive to hormone therapy, and we opted for radiation and hormone therapy, and But while I was there, I did meet a young woman who was 34 years old, Mercedes, who had the same exact situation that you did. She noticed something. She went to several doctors who dismissed her, told her that, you're too young. And she ended up having a much more serious case, and she has a young child. And she did have to have chemotherapy. So I know that doctors now, especially at Roswell, mentioned to me the importance of really understanding the risk that we're seeing much more now in younger women.
Yeah.
Mercedes, do you think if the doctors had been more responsive when you first went in, that your treatment would have been less aggressive?
I think it would have, because over the years, like looking at the paperwork over the years, it showed that it was growing. So it went from 1 centimeter to, I mean, like we saw the charts of growth. So it absolutely, if they would have said something at 26, it would have been a case, maybe like what Annette, experienced, but it wasn't, unfortunate.
Annette, the reaction that you must be getting is significant for this cover story recently on the Buffalo Healthy Living magazine. And also because you shared some very personal information about your life in college, hitchhiking across the country, joining a commune. Do you think your diagnosis made you feel more free to share all of that? Does the diagnosis give you kind of a new perspective on life? I know, you're also celebrating
like
your new grandbaby, Ori, too.
Yeah, it seemed like a good time to do it. I had never, I contemplated, well, do I share my story, just in a story? Do I put myself on the cover? I had never put myself on the cover. And people said, and I said, I have too many wrinkles, I have too many this. And everybody said, no, you need to put yourself on the cover, you need to do it. And it just, for me, so many people have thanked me. I've gotten overwhelming number of thank yous. Thank you for reminding us about early screening. So for me, it's not reminding people, so many people have asked me, are you okay? Are you going to be okay? And I don't think from the first minute I ever thought I was not going to be okay. I don't know if it was denial or what. I just did not relate to myself as having breast cancer. I related to myself as, oh, well, this is a brief interlude and I've got to take care of it. But I also didn't have a really bad diagnosis. So I'm really lucky. So, I think having a positive attitude, I think all of that is so important. But I really wanted women to know catching it really early can make a huge difference.
Mercedes, you were featured on the cover of Buffalo Healthy Living magazine. And of course, your journey with breast cancer inspired you to create an organization for young women to empower them, not just African-American women, but women of all kinds, to take control of their health, called For Our Daughters. What is the mission of that organization, and how do you think you've helped young ladies do what Annette just said, to get checked and take control of your health?
Yeah, so the moment that the doctors asked me about my family history and I couldn't answer any of the questions was a light bulb moment for me. So if I didn't know mine, I knew so many other young women did not. So the mission of For Our Daughters is super duper simple, teaching young women how to advocate for their own health and wellness. It's giving them the confidence to go home and learn their family history, giving them steps on how to speak up when they think something is wrong. And hopefully they create habits of becoming comfortable speaking up when things seem a little off, so that they're comfortable speaking up when they sit in the room with their doctors, or in front of their family or their loved ones, whomever that may be, and say, hey, something isn't quite right. So that was the whole mission, because I knew something was off, but I never spoke up for myself, nor did I ask my family history. So that's the whole goal of For Our Daughters.
And we talked a little bit, Annette, about the difference in instances of cancer with women of color and Caucasian women, and even some Jewish women as well. To share some of those statistics, if you will, because there is a difference.
So according to what I read, Johns Hopkins, Stanford, just going to my usual sources that I go to in doing Buffalo Healthy Living, I found that that more white women get cancer than African American women. I was surprised. I write about this stuff all the time, but I forget, some of the things that I learn about. So the median age at diagnosis for breast cancer is lower for Black, Hispanic, and Asian groups compared to white, non-Hispanic groups, but Black women tend to get more aggressive types. These women of color tend to get more aggressive types, like triple negative, which is estrogen receptor negative, progesterone receptive negative. And those are the things that my doctor referred to when she said, you have the best kind possible, because mine was highly receptive. And that meant that hormone treatment would help. Also, women of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, which I am, have a 1 in 40 chance, so much higher, of carrying BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene mutations. But I was tested and I did not have any gene for cancer. But I do have a familial history. And my familial history was interesting because it came from my father's brother had breast cancer. Now, how weird is that?
Yeah, and the male side. We have about a minute left, and I know because we have to make room for our doctor.
Okay.
Interesting statistics. And all of that, by the way, is at Buffalo Healthy Living magazine on your archives on the web, so make sure you search it out. Mercedes, before we wrap up, where can we see you now on Channel 7?
Oh, absolutely. Every day, 4:30, Monday through Friday, Studio 7, and then every Tuesday and Thursday in the noon hour, Recipes for 7 Life. We're cooking up good dishes, John.
All right. And Annette and Mercedes, you really make a powerful pair to inspire women. And we're going to take a short break. Annette's going to stay with us, but when we come back, Annette and I will be joined by a medical expert from Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center with more information that may save your life. We'll be right back. Buffalo Healthy Living magazine is a free, full-color magazine distributed throughout Western New York. Now, more than ever, as we all want our families and friends to be safe and well, Buffalo Healthy Living magazine is devoted to health, fitness, and nutrition for people of all ages. It's a great read and also has great recipes. Pick up Buffalo Healthy Living magazine all over our hometown or go online anytime at buffalohealthyliving.com. Welcome back to your Hometown Health Connection. We are talking about breast cancer and the personal journey with Annette Pinder, publisher of Buffalo Healthy Living magazine. And we welcome Dr. David Crooks, surgical oncologist at Breast Care of Western New York, Roswell Park Hematology Oncology in the Southtowns, and Jamestown Medical Oncology and Hematology. Educated at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, University of Toronto, Dr. Crooks has many accreditations, including certification by the American Board of Surgery as a fellow with the American College of Surgeons, and a member of the National Comprehensive Cancer Center, just to name a few. So we welcome you, Dr. Crooks. Doctor, thank you for joining us on your Hometown Health Connection. Let me ask you first, how important is it to maintain a positive and productive attitude through a cancer journey? We just heard in the previous segment how Annette Pinder and Mercedes Wilson were diagnosed, and how important is that positive attitude in this journey?
It's critical. It's critical to stay positive, both through exercise, focus mentally that this will be managed with your participation, obviously, your GP, your GYN, your surgeon, radiation oncologist, radiologist, medical oncologist. There is a team, as long as you stay positive, good nutrition, exercise, avoiding excess alcohol, all of the lifestyle issues that we know can affect breast cancer, that women will do well. The majority are early stage disease, and you're talking in excess of 95% survival. So attitude is really important.
Let's talk, Doctor, for a minute, and we'll get Annette involved in the conversation on the importance of early detection of breast cancer. Let's hear from you, and then I'll have Annette weigh in with this as well. But what do you think, Doc, about early detection? And are enough women really getting tested with their mammograms enough with early detection?
Just had at Roswell, we have what's called a mammothon, which is a kickoff in the first few days of October to remind women, if you've not had your mammogram, please come and get it done. Starting at the age of 40, and this is just broad categories, and continuing annually. The upper limit of mammograms, that's up for debate because you have different societies, but the boundaries basically are, if you are going to live at least 10 years, you don't have competing morbidities, say bad heart disease or some other issues that really compromise your projected survival, you have at least 10 years to go, you can continue mammograms beyond the age of 75. And we do that at Roswell. We continue, if you are fit and healthy and minor issues like hypertension, thyroid disease, etc., we tell those patients, you don't stop at 75. You continue to get mammograms. Because as you know, the incidence of breast cancer surfaces more as you get older. 7th decade, 8th decade, 9th decade. I have women who are in their 9th decade still getting mammograms because they're out there walking, they're doing a lot of activities, and they're planning to live beyond 100. So I'm there to help them, so is the team.
And Annette, I'm sorry,
one more
Doc.
thing, strong family history or genetics, then you'd start earlier. If someone in your family was diagnosed in their 30s, then you would obviously start getting your mammograms also in the 30s, somewhere about 5 years before. Now, most mammograms tend to not be as great when you're younger, so sometimes we do ultrasounds and sometimes we do breast MRI because of the density of the young breast. But yes, definitely get annual imaging.
And that family history helps. Annette, share your story about early detection with Dr. Crooks and how important that was.
So for me, it wasn't so much a journey as just feeling so fortunate. I mean, I have a very positive attitude. I did throughout the whole thing because I never thought, after I heard what it was, stage 1, 95% chance of it not coming back. I just felt very confident, grateful that I had pursued, getting a mammogram. I think it's really vital. It makes a difference. In the same office that I was while I was getting radiation, I met a woman who was 34 years old who had gone to a doctor and had to beg him on 3 different occasions to please let her get a mammogram because of what she found. And he told her, no, you can't have breast cancer, you're too young. And so what you just talked about, and she had HR2 triple positive. I don't know what that means exactly, but I'm sure you do. And she did have chemotherapy, and she had very young children, has very young children, and she is beside herself that it took so long to be allowed to get a mammogram. And so I'm really happy to hear that Roswell has a different point of view on that and is emphasizing that, because that's what I've heard. So.
Doctor, with that, how do you respond to that with a doctor that was not going to allow the mammogram, and responding to that too? Talk about the different stages of cancer, the different varieties.
And the first thing I would say to that physician who is delaying imaging, that they need to be a little bit more cognizant of the fact that it's not hard boundaries as to brain cancer. I've got patients in their 20s, early 30s, and of course the range tends to be about 30 to 75. So I'm glad she got treated. Let's talk about breast cancer. So the breast is a gland that makes milk. So the milk is made in what's called lobules, and then those lobules make their way through a delivery system, tube system, to the nipple so the baby can get the milk. That's called ducts. So just like the ducts in your house for air conditioning, it's ducts within the breast tissue. 75% of breast cancer occurs in the duct system, the tube system. And then about 15 to 20% is in the lobule system. So the commonest breast cancer is called invasive ductal because it's in the tube system. And then the second commonest would be invasive lobular because it's in the vein system. So we do the mammograms and sometimes ultrasounds if there's a density issue. And if it's extremely dense, definitely getting an ultrasound. If it's heterogeneously dense, which is one step down from extremely dense, it's still rather dense, and we'd like to add an ultrasound. Once you get into the other sections of the staging of the breast in terms of density, it goes to fibroglandular and then fatty. And that tends to be as you get older, you lose the ability to make milk because you're now perimenopausal, postmenopausal. So the breast is not as dense anymore. So the real categories of density are extremely dense and heterogeneously dense. But for those women, I always add an ultrasound because it can look through the dense tissue on the mammogram and give us more details.
We have about 5 minutes left. We want to touch base on a few things, Doc. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but let's talk about the rate of cancer returning. If somebody has gone through this and they feel like they're beyond it, what is the rate of cancer returning, and is that more common?
Yeah, so if you have much more aggressive disease, so you heard the mention of Annette of the receptors. So there's really 3 receptors or switches. I try to keep it simple so to understand the histology in the lab. So you have an estrogen receptor, progesterone receptor. As you're a woman, you recognize estrogen and progesterone. And there's a 3rd receptor called HER2/neu, like him and her, but it's called HER2/neu. The majority of breast cancers we like to see them estrogen positive in terms of the receptor, progesterone positive in terms of the receptor, and the majority tend to be HER2/neu negative. That's the commonest triplet that's out there. If a woman has that, she has low risk of recurrence because we've got therapies to block estrogen, and we don't have to worry about therapies for HER2 because it's HER2 negative. If you have triple negative disease, that is where the estrogen is off, the progesterone is off, in the company of the HER being off. That's a rather aggressive disease. There is no hormonal or pill to take for that, so we have to get those patients off to chemotherapy. The risk of recurrence has to do with the aggressiveness of the disease. Aggressive diseases are triple negative. Tends to be more common in African American women and people of color. And so we have to be much more cognizant of making sure we get those women to mammograms, screening, get their biopsies, and find out what their receptors are.
Let's talk about treatments available and the advances in breast cancer surgery reconstruction as well.
So treatments available on the surgical side, you can do lumpectomies, which is just a part of the breast, also called partial mastectomy. If the breast disease is more extensive, sometimes those patients will go to upfront chemotherapy, which is called neoadjuvant, which basically means before surgery. We do that, and after several weeks with a medical oncologist, we can restage and implant surgery. Sometimes that upfront chemo can downsize the tumor, so we can do a resection and keep most of the breast. If a woman has mastectomy, we can do reconstructions with plastic surgery and with an implant to native tissue, meaning part of the abdomen tissue is brought up to help reconstruct the breast now. Those are basically the surgical options after mastectomy.
We understand the breast cancer screening recommendations at Roswell you have a high risk program, and of course new recommendations for women who are younger as well. Annette and I were talking about that. Younger women are contracting breast cancer, and it's important that they get screened, isn't it?
Absolutely. If there's a family history, we can put them through basically a calculator. It's called the IBIS or the Tara-Cuzick. If they have an elevated lifetime cancer risk, they will end up going to the high-risk clinic. That elevated lifetime cancer risk, which is to the age of 85 or 90, if it's above 20% based on their family history, then they also qualify for an annual breast MRI on top of their mammograms at no cost because they've met the criteria of high risk.
I would like to know a little bit more about lobular cancer. And do we know less about lobular cancer?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because I've always been an advocate that we should be spending as much time on invasive lobular as we have in invasive ductal. So there is even a national symposium now that's global, the International Lobular Consortium. It was held last year. It's usually held in the fall. It was held in Pittsburgh, so I was able to attend that. This year, it's being held in Belgium and Brussels, so it's international. It's usually run by the UPMC individuals and their staff. Very, very informative. Invasive lobular, it behaves a little bit like melanoma. Melanoma can come back anywhere. Invasive lobular wants to pretend to be your friend. You have to be much more cognizant that it's not. No matter how great the features are, estrogen receptor positive, progesterone receptor positive, invasive lobular, some cases of that have a sinister side. You really have to follow those patients. The PET-CT scan, which is basically a sugar radioactive scan, about 40% of patients who have invasive lobular will be normal on the sugar, the FDG PET scan. There's a new PET scan out called FES PET, and that's radioactive estradiol. Since most invasive lobular cancers are estrogen positive, we radioactively label the estrogen and do the PET on that. And those women who go through an FDG PET, the regular PET, if that's negative on invasive lobular, we at Roswell will make sure they get the next PET, which is the FES PET, by the trade name Ceriana, C-E-R-I-A, which was all the research through General Electric. And we are able to detect cancers on those patients that are missed by the regular PET. That's what we worry about with invasive lobular.
Dr. David Crooks, we thank you. We've run out of time, but I know that we'll be continuing this discussion with breast cancer. We hope to have you back on your Hometown Health Connection, and good luck to you with all the great work you do at Roswell.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to come back again. Thank you.
And Annette, we thank you for sharing your personal journey and putting this program together, and of course all those resources at Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine. I'll see you soon, Annette Pinder.
Thank you.
All right, and we thank you for watching, and we make sure that you get all the information at buffalohealthyliving.com. And be safe and be well. A production fee for the preceding presentation of Your Hometown Health Connection was made by Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine and its sponsors.